So what is new Prime Minister Naftali Bennett's and alternate Prime Minister Yair Lapid's plan to reunite the country? And what kinds of policy changes can you actually expect from this fledgling government? Joining me to discuss, I'm here with Prime Minister's Office Media Advisor Jake Fishman, Chair of the Zionist Horizon, as well as political analyst Do Harlap. And then on Zoom, we also have political commentator Tami Mulad Hayo and Religious Zionism Party Knesset member Simcha Rotman. Thank you all so much for joining us. Tami, I'm going to start with you. Among the first orders of businesses outlined by the new government is setting term limits to 4-year limits for the Prime Minister's office. Do you think that it's time Israel had such a limitation?
Well, yes, it's time, but now is not the time. It seems like a personal issue. At the end of the day, yeah, we need to have some kind of a working democracy, and we have to have some guidelines about for how long can anyone sit in office. But right now, it seems like it's more something against Netanyahu. And even though I'm not for Netanyahu at all, I'm very much against personal legislation.
Do you see a personal tinge to this legislation?
First of all, yes, I agree with what she said, even though that you can still make the law in a way that it will start to count only from today, not from what we had before, because Netanyahu is not prime minister anymore, unfortunately, is my opinion. But I don't think it makes sense to have this law at all in our political system, because we have a parliamentary system that we have parties with seats that they show a specific population, specific demographics. Some of them are more general, like the Likud or the Labor. But every party is picking only the person who's going to lead the party. They don't pick the prime minister. And we don't have an election for prime minister. We have election for seats in our parliament. So I don't think this limitation can make any sense. It's not like the administrations in the U.S. where the president...
We have term limits for other positions, though.
Not for elected by this kind of way of, we have for, not something, we have for the president, okay? But our president is something which doesn't have any power with it, doesn't represent people, specific.
All right, well, Jake, I want to turn to you now with a slightly new question. In terms of unity, because Bennett and Lapid are both saying it's time to rejoin this country, and they say that they are going to be the arbiters of that unity. Where do Bennett and Lapid have to go, however, to turn the public opinion around? Because right now, it is really roughly 50-50 with many people, many of them staunch supporters of Bennett's in the past, now opposing.
That's right. We're under very unusual circumstances where this unity government does not have to simply do a task of moving forward with pleasing a voter base that is very similar, right, homogeneous. We have 8 parties that represent 8 different types of ideologies and foundations and voter bases. And so to move this forward in a way in terms of the media in a homogeneous state, in a full front, to get voters and Israel at large behind this new unity government, they're going to have to run on a very similar kind of, let's say, slogan, right? And the slogan that's uniting them currently is bye-bye Netanyahu, right? Is bye-bye Bibi. And so I think if they continue to use the opposition to allow them to maintain control, we'll see a united push.
Do you see, and let's say for the sake of argument that Netanyahu retires, which as of right now, it doesn't seem like that's likely, but let's say Netanyahu were not in the equation. Is that the end of the unity government?
I think it's one of the legs of the chair falling out, yes. Now, would that lead to a collapse? It's hard to say. But I do believe strongly that the leverage that Netanyahu is bringing in the opposition is allowing the public to feel that, laying down some of their principles and some of their ideologies and the reasons that they voted for even Bennett or Lapid, that they lay them down and go, I accept the fact we need to make some, Knesset members mentioned this, we need to make some sacrifices. We need to make some sacrifices.
All right. Knesset member Rothman, thank you so much again for being with us. Now, I want to ask you about the Justice Ministry, because in Bennett's speech, he also said that the Justice Ministry designate, Gideon Sar, will lead a process to create an appropriate balance between the judicial, legislative, and executive branches of government, whereby his initiative to split the role of the Attorney General is a significant first step. I've spoken to you numerous times about the judiciary and a lot of the issues with the legislature and the judiciary in Israel. What do you know of the details of Sal's plan, and do you agree or conflict with it?
It's a lot of it depends really, as you said, on the details, and it has not been revealed yet. But I can say one thing. My issues with the justice system, which I talk about for many years, and I was a very loud opposition for Netanyahu and for the governments that used to be in the past few years. Besides the fact that on other issues I support them and I'm part of the right wing politically, but as the legal advisor of Meshilot, the Movement for Governability and Democracy, I was criticizing the governments of Netanyahu just the same, because I believe that reforming the justice system, reforming the role of the chief legal advisor, which has no similar equivalent anywhere around the world, it's something that's not supposed to be a debate between the right and the left in Israel. So I think it might be the only thing that this government might be able to push forward, because on many other issues, it's a conflict of right and left. On this issue, you can find people, sadly not enough, but you can find people on the left, on the right, that believe that needs to be changed. I can't say if it's sadly or happily. I don't believe this government will last long enough to do this reform. But that's why I'm not celebrating today, even though one of the major policy issues that my party and myself pushed forward for many years was finally adopted in the coalition agreement and by a justice minister who wants to do this for many years. That's why I'm not so happy, besides all the arguments about the government.
All right, Tommy, one of my final questions before we move on to a new topic. Former Prime Minister Netanyahu largely hailed as being a strong face for Israel, especially on the international stage. How do you expect Israel's image to likely change with Netanyahu now in the opposition, especially with the new foreign minister being Yair Lapid?
Well, first of all, Yair Lapid, he's very good in front of cameras, and he knows how to stand in front of an audience. But you know, the one thing I expect Netanyahu to do, that if he really cares about the state of Israel and the people of Israel, is even if he is in the opposition, he is expected to still speak out for Israel. We are all expected to speak out for Israel. Whatever criticism he has, well, he should do it as well. He and his supporters used to shout all the time, inside the home, not outside, and towards the world. He should be one of the representatives of Israel. But also, I have to say that Naftali Bennett, Yair Lapid, and the rest of the people in this government, well, they know what they're doing. They're not just people who came out of the street into the Knesset. They're all seasoned politicians, people who have done one or two things. They know how to speak English, and Netanyahu is not the only one. They know how to reconnect and to connect with the rest of the world. And we've seen it already, because one of the first phone calls that Bennett received was from Biden, and it was a very pleasant phone call. So I'm not worried in that sense.
I'm very worried about that, because I don't know, should I be worried more from the new administration, the new government here in Israel, or the administration in the United States with Joe Biden? It's a bad situation for the Jewish people those days. I'm sorry, I have to say that. It's a crazy situation. I think that the Iran agreements will be in a problematic position by our side. I think that many issues that we have with the U.S. are now going to be in a problematic situation, because we have...
Like which issues?
Iran nuclear deal. That's a main issue.
I mean, so far the Bennett new coalition has said that they
yes, but they have the Achim Muslimim inside their own coalition. They have Arabs in the coalition. Now, I don't say
it doesn't
that
necessarily
Netanyahu
mean that they're going to be suddenly pro the Iran deal.
I think that Benny Gantz and the left-wing parties in this coalition are kind of confused about what should be Israeli interests on this issue. But so I'm worried about that. That's all I have to say.
All right.
I
Well,
suspect that Bennett's position regarding the Iranians is exactly the same as Netanyahu. Maybe the difference between the two is while Netanyahu has put himself in a very narrow position, opposing the U.S., opposing Europe. Maybe now Bennett will be able to work with them to reach some kind of a better deal.
It's not opposing anyone. It's being for our interests. It's not opposing anyone. Nuclear Iran
at the end of
is
the day,
not
you
good
have
for
to
us.
remember, the whole world does not revolve Israel. The
That's
whole
exactly
world
the problem,
revolves the Iranian issue,
Tammy,
not
that's
because
exactly the
of
problem.
Israel.
Simcha?
Tammy, that's exactly the problem. You're 100% right. The whole world does not revolve around the state of Israel. But I want my prime minister to be 100% around Israeli interests. And the fact that I suspect and to stand your ground, to stand Israel's ground against, yes, and sometimes it means against the US, Europe, some other countries, you need to have a strong coalition behind you. No one in this government is strong coalition. We found in this coalition some members of this coalition wants Israeli soldiers to be trialed in international courts. They said it in their own voice to say that they will.
They
help
didn't take it
Bennett,
back.
and maybe even the people.
All right. Well,
To
so
say
I
that
want.
they will help.
So I want to speak a little bit more about the concerns with respect to the Arab Ram party being in the coalition. And Jake, I'm going to turn back to you for this. Meretz leader Nitzan Horowitz, who we just heard a little bit about Meretz being a left-wing party, they said during his speech, Meretz leader Nitzan Horowitz said during his speech on Ram's participation that it's the answer to all the racism and to those who carried out violence and who want to mark all Arabs in this country as the enemy. How do you respond?
So I think that we're having a kind of a trending word of unity that comes also from the West, comes from the Biden campaign, and also after he entered office, we hear a lot about unity. So I think that came also in a bit of a delay here in Israel, this concept of unity, which everyone loves and everyone can connect with that. I think that actually bringing that into fruition is the real challenge, right? And we live in a land that's complex, surrounded by enemies and some friends, right? But we're dealing in a complex situation. And to have inside the House, Knesset members who connect on enough topics that there's enough political leverage to keep this thing together, this coalition, if we can do that long enough, I think that there can be absolutely some unity that comes out of this. But I think even more than that, with all that put to the side, we have an unprecedented event here. We have something that just happened for the very first time, that we have an Arab party in the coalition. And that is significant. So.
All right. Now, I want to turn back to you, Simcha, because I want to talk a little bit more about the opposition as well, such as it is. Former Prime Minister and Likud chair Netanyahu vowing to work tirelessly towards undermining this new coalition. Simcha, Bezalel Smotrich and fellow religious Zionist party members Itamar Ben-Gvir, Orit Struk, they all had to be escorted from the plenum yesterday for following their comments and their heckling during the Knesset session. Bennett responded that the screams are as loud as their failures when they were in office. How do you respond to this comment?
First, if I remember correctly, they weren't, and I also was kicked out of the plenum for the same reason. It was not about shouting or using bad words or whatever reasons. It was because we showed pictures of terror victims because we were asked by the families of those terror victims to go against what exactly. It's the first time. It's not in the first time we have an Arab person in the government. We did have an Arab minister, and a lot of non-Jews ministers through the years. But what is the first time that we have a party that supports terror. and that's why we showed those pictures, and we were kicked out because of that, not because shouting. And definitely, you can't say about Orit Struk that she didn't do anything in office. Also, Itamar Ben-Gvir, they were never ministers. In fact, we came into this Knesset as an opposition party. We weren't part of the last government. We were opposition to this government exactly for the same reason. Some of the reasons are we're in the opposition of this government, because a government that is built on that does not share the same ideology, that does not share the same goals, that does not agree on where Israel needs to go, is a government that cannot push forward anything. It will be busy and tired with the inner fights, and we will have a dysfunctioning government.
All right, Dor, speaking of internal fighting, it's largely suspected that now, going into the opposition, Netanyahu will be usurped by members of his own party, Nir Barkat, Yuli Edelstein. Also, members of UTJ have said that they've expressed regret for maybe not pushing Netanyahu out further for political gains. Do you think that Netanyahu going to the opposition is the beginning of the end of his career?
I will say what I think about this week events. We saw that Netanyahu is not going to leave the stage, okay? And the Likud is a Democratic party. So, and I believe that if will be a primary for the head of the Likud, Netanyahu will win again. Whoever will oppone him, and he will be first again, okay? So, and the people will follow him, okay? Because I think that the whole right wing in Israel, they understand that it's not that Netanyahu was kicked out because of personal issues or because anything like that. He was moved aside because he represented right wing national interests, ideas, ideologies. And that's why he was moved aside. And we can see who was happy this week and who wasn't. Now, I want to say another thing about this unity-wide coalition, okay? It was a very funny, ridiculous thing to see this week, okay, in the vote, that they got 60 for the new government and 59 against the government. After they tried to play every shtick and trick, and they spoke with every specific personal parliament member just to make sure that they have the votes. And again, they won by one, okay? And then in the press, they call it a wide unity government, okay? That's a joke. This is not going to be a unity government. It will be a paralyzed government.
All right. Well, I think they were talking about the different parties, and not so much the majority.
The only thing that unites this government is a hatred for one person, and not only to one person, but to the public that this one person represents.
So with all of that in mind, and with respect, Knesset member Simcha Rotman, and Dor, I just wanted to take what you guys are saying right now and bring it actually over to Jake Fishman. Again, Netanyahu is saying that he's going to be working tirelessly from the opposition to overturn this vote of confidence, to overturn this new coalition. But having tried everything in the book, as Dor just explained, and they still lost, do you see any chance of that happening?
I think that as a leader of the opposition, Netanyahu will be incredibly strong. I mean, he knows politics. And so whether it's leading the coalition or leading the opposition, I think that he will be looking for every mistake and every opening with the coalition to expose weakness and to essentially allow it to topple over and lead us to another range of elections, perhaps.
All right, well, I think that we'll have to wait and see. This is a brand new government. We don't know what's going to happen next. But in the meantime, thank you so much, Jake Fishman, Dor Harlap, Knesset member Simcha Rotman, and political analyst Tami Molad Hayo.